Hey guys, and welcome back to another Marvel Rivals video. But today we are doing something a little different. That's right, it's the long-awaited 2K subscriber special. And for it, I won't be making any character pictures myself. No, instead I'll be looking at some of your guys' ideas instead. Of course, as always, if you enjoy the video and it does well, I'm more than happy to do more of these in the future. Every now and then collecting some of the ideas I read in the comments and going over them. This video probably isn't going to be as overly edited as some of my other videos on account of how much I've got to go over here, and also the fact that I am still working on a Rivals video to go up not long after this one. So going forwards, I'm going to have a look at 3 Marvel Rivals comments, 2 DC Rivals comments, 2 special mentions, and finally I'll round the video off with some channel updates and plans going forwards. With that being said, let's dive right into our first Marvel Rivals comment. I thought I'd start our picks off strong with someone who has managed to put a pitch under almost every single one of my Rivals videos. Urbanator had a shout out, I believe, in one of our earliest Marvel Rivals videos I dropped, back when I used to mention comments at the end of them. And they haven't stopped pitching characters since. So recently they put forward their own idea for Nova, and I think it's a great way to show everyone how a character can be interpreted in different ways and still feel like themselves, since I also did Nova. So Ubs here made Nova a Vanguard and a brawler at that, granting Nova melee attacks called Gravimetric Pulse. This ability, along with all abilities I'll be talking about, are on screen. If you want to read them, pause and give it a go. I've copied everything word for word as to not misconstrue what the writers have came up with. This seems to be an awesome way of both making Nova an in-your-face hero, whilst also maintaining the ability to cover some degree of range. The secondary power you gave him also entails a bit of distance coverage, and something I don't know if you had in mind, but as a secondary, this would be the first dash in the game not locked behind a cooldown, which I find really interesting as an idea. Of course, I imagine it wouldn't be spammable, kind of like the Thing's Haymaker, but it would be a cool way to keep the vibes of playing as a human rocket up. Already some really cool potential, and all in all a great base to the kit. Then, Ubs established the idea for using Nova Force as a resource to spend on abilities. Honestly, I can't believe I didn't even consider this myself. I directly use Nova Force, but implementing it as a straight up currency resource is really useful, and the way you end up doing it kind of ends up becoming this sort of power redirection system, and it's so creative. A hero who moves their power source around their kit to specialize in key moments is, in my opinion, the ultimate form of skill expression. Okay, that might be a little bit exaggerated, but still, it'd be pretty dope. As for the abilities you gave him to use these on, well, diverting power seems to be the main one. The only thing I will say is about your bravery using numbers. You specify his HP max goes up by 75 HP per point that he uses on it, of course, and he has 7 points to spend. A wise man might just drop all of these into defense and take a bonus 525 HP, because even without resources, that's enough extra help to help you survive almost any gunfight. Maybe instead, each additional point after the first only adds a smaller amount. Say, 1 point adds 75 HP, the second through 4th point add 50 HP each, and then the 5th through 7th point add 25 HP, for a maximum HP increase of 300. Obviously, I don't hold numbers too high on this channel, they can always be fixed up, but it's just something to consider when directly choosing to acknowledge them. Deputize is also a fun little nod to Nova's role as a space cop, and it seems super cool to include your team in the resource management. Obviously, I dig the Ultimate's name, and the concept is brilliant, becoming a literal rocket and flying headfirst into the battle to deliver a devastating blow is super fun. I also noticed she gave him a team up, something I didn't end up doing with my Nova, and you chose Star-Lord. Of course, that makes sense. It also works for what you gave him, although the best part of Stellar Shift is the reload that comes with it, something Nova in your kit doesn't get to take advantage of. So what if instead, using it granted 1 bonus Nova Force point that's temporary, like your dash overcharges the system or something, or maybe the barrel roll could knock 1 or 2 seconds off of a cooldown. I'm not certain, it's just maybe giving that secondary feature that actually comes with the dodge could be useful. If you guys are interested in my take on Nova, or just want to read the comment in its original video, check out the playlist in the top right of the video, or head straight over to my video titled Marvel Rivals in Space. Next up is what I would honestly deem the most creative pitch I've seen in the comments yet. Wrecker as a Vanguard. For those of you who don't know, this is Wrecker, and he's a bit of a joke amongst Marvel villains. His whole shtick is he kind of wrecks things with his crew, and he waves around a big old crowbar. So seeing someone take something so innately boring and plain and then making something so interesting is wild to me. You leave a hint at what's to come in the attack description, but generally he seems normal at first. Then you drop this bombshell of a passive. Property damage makes debris appear on the map. Alone, it's interesting, but then remembering Marvel Rivals has a core feature centered around destructible environments, this is just something I think needs to come up in the game. The map breakage directly tying into this passive is ingenious, and it makes the map's layouts and structure matter on a strategical level. Honestly, it's wild the game would add breaking the map as a mechanic, but then not tie it into any characters yet. The second passive, Safety Equipment, is a real fun way to maintain the required survivability of a Vanguard, and simultaneously rewards them for being where they are needed to be. Moving on from that, we have some cool ways of using this concept. Firstly, there's Shovel Up, a fun way to give Wrecker some range, and it already ties back into that passive by getting stronger given you are in the right location. Then Hard Hat grants not only a movement ability and a method of moving your opponents, but more importantly, it gives him a way of destroying the map around him, tying back into his core ability. If he didn't have this, my top suggestion would have been either a passive that lets Wrecker destroy breakables quicker, or an ability that directly destroys them for him. And finally, you rounded off this kit with Wrecking Ball, something I would usually associate with Thunderball, but let's be honest, A, if Wrecker's in the game, his crew wouldn't likely join him, and B, Wrecker knows how to swing a metal ball and break stuff. I enjoy the tornado-esque aspects of this, but where it really shines is how it then becomes a magnet projectile, tossing enemies aside as it leaves him behind, something I always expected Magneto to have in his kit before the game was revealed. I also want to quickly take this time just to say, if you guys notice your pitch is in this video, please do say hi in the comments, and everyone else, please give back feedback as well. Obviously, be nice, be kind, don't be an asshole to people, and use this as a place to also leave your ideas for characters who I didn't mention. I want to see everyone looking at each other's pitches and really continue to build this community that led to this 2K special in the first place. And finally, for the Rivals comments, I chose something Peyton here came up with. I really liked how it's an example of a character being designed in a way most wouldn't expect. Now, they didn't specify a role, and whilst I assumed it's a Vanguard, I didn't write that, knowing that would then cement this section as only being Vanguards. However, given the changes to some aspects I didn't see coming, this kit could theoretically be considered as a duelist as well. I say knowing full well it's a Vanguard, and I just don't want to be called out for only picking Vanguards as a Vanguard main. First off, the primary, being a ranged attack, is a ballsy move on the destroyer of all characters. For those of you who don't know, he's basically a big old metal guy who guards Asgardian treasure and fires face lasers when needed, but one would usually associate him as a big strong punching guy, so the finger lasers is a fun touch. I especially like the charge up idea. Not a lot of heroes in the game who focus on heavy combat rely on a charge up mechanic, and I think it could also be interesting to see it in the position of a primary fire. Rivals is currently lacking on stationary mortar heroes, not something I'd normally say is necessary, but when Overwatch is your biggest competitor, I guess it's an archetype some people just want. And it's something I hadn't even considered, let alone for a guy like the Destroyer, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be interesting, that's for certain. You also mentioned an ability focused on defense, leading me to making this probably end up being a Vanguard. Now you mention it in standoffs and specified boosting his next attack, but I think this would be a cool way to overcharge the mortar ability as well. Maybe turn it from a stance to a single powerful attack if the shield has been successfully used. Just a thought to then incorporate combos and whatnot. Then you went ahead and gave us that classic face laser I mentioned earlier as the ult. That I think feels right, but what I will say is this is a case where I think we need either a passive ability or maybe a secondary fire to really round out the kit. It just feels like it's missing something. Not a lot, albeit, but that's something. And here I want to quickly mention Zapforth368, who has managed to come up with an element I never acknowledge in my videos, but I think is really fun and kind of necessary, and that's the alt voice lines. I'm not going to do all of them, but you can pause and read some on your screen if you'd like, or just check out some of the comments in some of our videos, and I'm sure you'll see him down there writing out his ideas for some of the voice lines. Honestly, I think it's just a bunch of fun, super cool idea, and I can't believe I never considered coming up with any myself. Now onto our DC comments, and firstly, this is a pitch by James Neo LK8ZX, and it's one I had to mention. If not for the fact it's my favourite character of all time, Jason Todd aka Red Hood. Look, don't judge me, he's great and I love him. Immediately, I love the use of multiple weapons. Jason has a toolbox and he's willing to use it. You don't specify, but I imagine this is a scroll wheel / triangle button to swap weapons type of sitch. Explosive batarangs makes for a fun Batman reference that also sticks with Jason's style. I will say now that the kit falls into the same area my Batman one did. Check out the DC Trinity video to see that, and it overdoes it a tiny bit with what Jason has access to. And so if I had to drop something from this kit, it probably would be the explosive batarangs, I'm afraid. That being said, they are still super awesome and a great addition to the kit as a whole. This is a mechanic I think can be implemented more into these kind of games. Enemy control through limited movement and options without being a full-on stun or pull-in ability. I love the idea of making a danger zone that moves and keeps enemies where you want them, which is exactly what this taser ability is doing. Perfect considering Jason has both melee expertise with the katanas and range damage with the akimbo guns. Then we get the obligatory mobility power in the form of a grappling hook. I noticed you've also gave it a pull-in feature, and I think this could be a little bit broken, especially given how much his kit has to offer, but a simple change I would make is to have the pull-in enemies mechanic only function if that enemy is inside a taser bubble, forcing you to combo cooldowns and think on the fly with when you're throwing out that taser and where you're throwing it so that you can then grapple people in. Then there's Assault Rifle, a really simple ability, but hey, that doesn't mean it's bad. And it seems to really lean into the whole Jason Todd high damage theme we have going on here. The passive to some might seem like a little cool feature that keeps him alive, but I personally adore it for the Under the Red Hood reference, a great comic book and a great film, and now a great hypothetical passive. I also like the idea that after this goes off, until you next get KO'd or die or whatever, Jason's actual face with the domino mask on is on show, since the helmet blew up and all. I also enjoy how it ties into my pre-existing Batman kit with the smoke and stealth mechanic. The ult is a lovely addition for anyone who's read Red Hood comics past the Red Hood storyline as well, not just stopping at his introduction like so many of his adaptations do. This uses the All Blades, and it's a cool method of switching him up, kind of like magic in Marvel Rivals. It seems generally to be a mix of dashing and slashing overall, but I do think it's still a fun touch. Maybe the Taser Blast could instead be replaced by a crowd control move, but other than that, I do like it. Then we hit the team up, and it's a fun one. Basically improving Red Hood's intel whilst giving Batman another gadget on his utility belt. well. I was really excited though to see you came up with a rivalry as well. Obviously it had to be Death in the Family, and the crowbar slowdown I think is really fun. But maybe instead of seeing Joker's outline, something a little mediocre, especially given his team up ability, I would make him either immune to Joker's gas from my Joker kit in the Dark Trinity video, or maybe give Jason a Vendetta ability where if Joker triggers his passive, he also gains a damage buff. Something like that to show that he's coming back for the clown. The final DC comment I wanted to cover was from another regular in the comments section, good old Trash Man, who, much like Urbanator, is a member of our little community here who's made so many pitches it's hard to pick just one, but I went with a strategist, specifically Raven. Starting things off, I like Raven being a strategist who doesn't shoot to heal. It's in my opinion an overdone method of healing anyway, and then on top of that it just doesn't feel right for Trigon's daughter. Of course, as a strategist, it is still necessary to heal, and this first ability is just so fun. I've been begging for a teleporter who functions kind of like this for a while. Hell, my first Rivals video gives Nightcrawler a very similar move. That video though, don't bother with that one, it's not the best quality. And of course, I noticed the similarities to Cloak's group shift here as well. I also think it makes sense to link this with her slow fall like you did, something that there's no point delving into, but it was a necessary mention anyway. I'm glad to see you implement the whole empath part of Raven's powers, a big thing that I think often gets overlooked for magic and spells that she can offer. I will say, as I already spoke to you about in the comments, I think this ability should not have Raven take on the damage presented 1-for-1, but it should instead be handled as her taking on a percentage of that damage, as to not instantly kill her when she's healing allies with bigger health bars, or to just put her in a horrible situation overall. I do, however, love the trade-off of then granting her access to a powerful attack that heals her back up. Like, she's taking your pain onto herself, but then bestowing it from her onto an enemy. Very Raven, very cool. I really like the passive as well. It comes off like you imagine this being used when she can catch a breath and run behind cover. Now, I think that could happen, but more often than not, I see this more so as a healing between fights after a win to reset herself, or as a half the team just died, so I need to go retreat and wait while everyone else respawns. Both still useful times to have this ability, but not exactly what I read you as intending. And of course, we have her final move, a Shadow Ball ripped straight from Noob's sidebar, and I love it. It's dark and cool and kind of reminds me of Moon Knight's team up, but it also does what I said about Jason's taser and slows enemies in a spot. Super useful if you're skilled enough to pull it off. Then we have her Unshackled Soul, and whilst I understand that this isn't super complex, I still think this ult is as fun and awesome. I think that's probably mainly due to the visual of summoning a giant raven, but I like it either way. And I think as a low cost ult, it could very much come in handy. As for the team up you came up with, I don't know how I feel about it. See, the idea of Beast Boy basically removing himself from the fight to pocket a strategist, a sentence I never thought I'd say by the way, seems a bit redundant and counterintuitive to the role of a duelist. However, the visual and concept I really enjoy. The idea of him becoming a raven to then be by Raven is so cute and wholesome, and I love that so much. Maybe reworking it a little bit and coming up with a different way of doing it could be a good solution. And if you're interested, I will be making both Red Hood and Raven kits on our DC Rivals series soon enough. Now, this would be our second honorable mention, and if you've been following the channel for a while now, you'll probably already be aware of this, but Estranged over on Reddit created a sick ass piece of artwork inspired by my Doorman pitch. They also made a cool Sentry and the Void design for their own kit as well, something that may have happened quite a while ago now, but I think more than deserves the credit and mentioning here in our 2K special. Since it doesn't matter when in the channel's life you commented, you're all helping support and make the channel grow. And because of that, I think now is as good a time as any to move on to our channel update. Well, here we are, not even 6 months in, and we've hit 2K, and you guys have made this channel such a fun place to be. So I want to let you all know where I plan to take us going forwards. Well, obviously the Marvel Rivals pitches will continue, and in the future I might even do some game mode ideas or more of those pre-making videos like the Ultron one I did. I'll also be taking taking our DC Rivals series to completion over the course of this year as well. That being said, I don't plan to really stop any of the things we've already got in the works. Comics and Tea will continue to come out, although not as regularly as our Rivals videos, and I think I might start doing some reviews of some upcoming geeky related films. This July could be a really strong time for the channel to try and hit those areas. I also plan to make a few retrospectives going forwards, but more on that in the future since they'll take quite a while to make. But most of all, I want you guys to let me know what you want, and are there games or shows or anything that could use some concepts and pitches and creative thinking? If so, let me know on comments on any of our videos going forwards. The other thing is milestones, the journey. I want to set a goal and I want something to happen when we hit it. So with everything here, I think we could use a Discord server or something along those lines for posting pitches and concepts in, but I don't want to take the time to manage something like that while we're only at 2k. I would also like to start live streaming on occasion so I can get more involved with you guys as a community. So here's the plan. Over the next few months, I'm going to set up a live streaming setup, and it will likely be on Twitch. So if we hit 250 followers on Twitch, or if we hit 3k on YouTube during that time, I will make the streams a regular thing and not like an occasional thing. Then when we eventually hit 5k on YouTube, I'll make the Discord. That will probably be a long way away, but I think it's only fair to set up goals for myself and you guys. So let's keep this up and have as much fun as possible. Thanks again to everyone for getting us this far, and I'll see you all next time.